Gente, it's your boy Conejo, ya saben, man, aquí andamos. Pretty much on this video, I wanted to talk about a little bit about myself, right? My experiences and shit like that, right? Because I've been doing profiles and all that, and I'm gonna continue. I know that there's a couple that I'm working on, but I really need to do a little bit more investigating and tapping in with them and talk a little bit more with them, right? To see what the fuck's really going on with those profiles, at least, right? So I can be having shit more in the facts. Um, but pretty much I wanted to talk about my experience, man, going to Corcoran. You know what I mean? My Corcoran drive on the bus. And people that know a little bit of Corcoran, because I went to old Corcoran, not new Corcoran, old Corcoran, right? That prison happens to have some history right there, right? That's where they used to have all the Corcoran fights and the shoe wars and all that shit, right? So I'm gonna talk about a little bit of my experience and how I felt on the drive over there and how it really was over there. You know what I mean? Was it a bad prison? Was it a good prison? And shit like that. I'm gonna give my opinion. So pretty much, they ended up telling me when I was in Soledad that I was gonna get transferred. That prison when I was there in Soledad, it was a level 3, but it was gonna get transferred into like a level 2, and plus I wasn't really a good role model for that prison, right? I'll be one to admit it, and as well as all other compas that were there with me, you know, we had to get off and fix the yard, homie. It was kind of a fucked up yard for the compas, and they weren't doing what they were supposed to do, so we had a clean yard. And pretty much your boy got transferred out in like less than 6-7 months, and it was kind of fucked up, right? Because like that was the closest prison that your boy could have been to home. You know what I mean? Soledad's like the closest one, besides Salinas Valley and shit like that. But those are pretty much next to each other. So when I had got to Soledad, I had came from Ironwood, so I was hella far from home, right? So I was kind of happy that I was there, you know, because I was getting visits and shit like that, you know. And plus the weather, homie. I love my weather from the 831, homie. We happen to have one of the best weathers, to be quite real, in my opinion. I'm pretty sure some other people are gonna be like, nah, fool, fuck that. Frisco, San Diego, and start mentioning other cities, right, that are like on the coast. And pretty much, I went to committee, and I was like a little smart ass, right? Like I didn't really care, and they were reading my file and all the dumb stuff that had occurred in Soledad and shit that I had participated in. And they were bringing it up. They were like, oh, woo, woo, like, instead of you behaving so that we can try to overwrite you and shit like that, it don't seem to be working for you, right? Like, you're just messing up. So they had tried to threaten me, right? They're like, you know what? How would you feel going back to Ironwood? I was like, it's nothing. I was like, I already know how the people are there, how the program runs, everything. I was like, you can send me right back to the desert. It's good. I liked it there. I did 2 years, so I was like, so you can send me back. I was like, I'm not scared or tripping, like, you know. So I was young though. I remind you, I was young. I want to say I was 20, 21 at that time. And so they're like, you know what? Since you think you're a little badass, we're gonna send you to Old Corcoran. So at first, I ain't gonna lie, bro. I was like, you could send me wherever, right? Like, to my knowledge, that's where they have most of the good, like, solid compas. At least some of the compas that I knew that were hella cool and they were my boys, I knew that that's where they were at the moment. So I was like, you can send me wherever, man. I'm not tripping on that shit. But I remind you, that's the attitude of a youngster, you know, and that was at the moment. After I went back to my cell and thought about it, right, I was like, damn, okay, so they're sending me to Old Corcoran, right? So I'm thinking about all these things that I heard in the past about Old Corcoran, right? Like, man, they have Greenwall there, which I already had a couple experiences with Greenwall and shit like that, so I wasn't tripping on that. But they were telling me that they set up fights and all this type of bullshit, right? So I was like, man, what if I set myself up for failure, right? Like, in the sense that I can go over there and catch hella more time, right? Only because I want to act harder and shit like that, right? So I was like, man, fuck. So luckily, I went to the yard like a week or two later, right? Because I believe something happened, went on lockdown. And I talked to my homie. Shout outs to Sabo from fucking Bison. You already know who you are, brother. I said mine's a fool. there was a couple homies that were with me in the yard. So they were compas, and they were like, "Hey, bro, we're up for transfer too, right? We're gonna be going over here, woo woo." And I was like, "Oh, cool, right?" So I knew I wasn't gonna go solo bolo, and so with time passed, right? Like the homie ended up going first. They took him on a bus, and I thought I was gonna be up on that bus, and I wasn't. So I ended up going on the next following bus. I ended up going with like, I want to say 4 people that I knew, right? And on the drive over there, man, I'm not gonna lie. If you guys been to the prison, or if you guys have experienced a cop car, right? Like the back of a cop car, you guys can tell like the seats ain't super comfortable, and they got the AC going, and if you got the window shot, you're fucking frozen. You know what I mean? You're pretty much frozen right there. And I remember I was reflecting and thinking, right? I was like, fuck, all right, now where are they going to drive me, right? Because I hate them bus drives, bro. They suck. Bus drives suck, you know? So I was like, man, let's see where we're going. So we're driving to Corcoran. We passed through the city, which is not really a big city, you know what I mean? And then we started passing through fields and cows and just all kinds of like, how would you call it? Like just nature, I guess, right? The hell, I was tripping up. But yeah, pretty much. So it was cool. Like the drive was cool. It wasn't that bad, but it gave me time to think, right? Like, fuck, what's gonna be new? What's gonna be expected? And shit like that, man. So you do tend to get nervous, especially once you start thinking about everything, right? So I was like, fuck. Got there, the whole little process. I started noticing that it wasn't that bad, right? Like I started feeling like, well, this is kind of like a regular thing. And right there in Corcoran, they happen to have like little posters and shit like that, right? Of like most of the people that are in the shoe, but it's like a scare tactic, right? Like for the youngsters and shit. And they have like all these fools that look all blasted up, and like these serial killers, right? That have single cells and shit like that. And they show you like, hey, bro, if you fuck up, that's what they told us, right? They're like, if you fuck up, those will be your cellies. You know what I mean? Pretty much, well, so we're just like. I know besides me and some other homies, they were just looking at that poster like, fuck, bro. Are they really going to be selling me up with some J-Cat like this? You know what I mean? And it's not that you're scared. It's just, we'll call it the bubble guts. We'll call it the bubble guts. Pretty much your stomach starts feeling a little bit weird, but it's just that you're nervous. You know, it's a new environment, new people. You might see some old people that you know, right? But it's... Every time that you land in a new prison, homie, you just get this weird feeling, right? Like, okay, what's new here, you know? And when I ended up happening to push through the yard after we went through R&R and all that bullshit, right? Right away, I felt some comfort. Even though, like, some people would be like, man, what the fuck? I felt comfort, right? Because as soon as I exit R&R, there was already some homies out there, right? When they were escorting us. And, like, I remind you, I had a Mongo, right? I had cut it off, and then I let my Mongo grow again. I had another Mongo in Soledad. And so I had a Mongo, so someone recognized me that was with me in Ironwood, some youngster, you know? He's like, hey, G, you're Casper, huh, from Watson? And I was like, yeah, well, what's up? He's like, you don't remember me, huh? And I was like, nah, G, not to be real, nah, I don't. And he had explained it to me that he was right there on the 4-yard with me in Ironwood. And I was like, oh, okay, G, that's what's up. And then he told me right away, like, there's some homies right here from your town. And I was like, oh, cool. So I felt relieved, homie. Like, I felt some type of, like, peace, you know? Like, I was like, you know what? It's going to be an all right place. And sure enough, homie, luckily it was. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that everybody gets the same experience. But pretty much my experience right there in Corcoran was pretty decent, bro. Like, for being in prison, you got to understand shit will always happen in prison, right? So, I mean, you're going to see stuff more than others in other prisons, right? But, like, right there in that prison, even though it was cracking and shit like that, I felt comfort, homie. We had a group of solid-ass compas right there. So, like, after I got established, boom, it was cool, homie. I did my time perfectly fine. I didn't even want to leave from that pen. I ended up leaving again, but it was because of my good behavior. That one was actually good behavior. I was able to do my time pretty good right there, like where my points were dropping and stuff that we were doing, we weren't getting caught for there, you know what I mean? Just like the cops didn't really give 2 fucks, you know what I mean? As long as you didn't fucking make them write paperwork and shit like that, we were getting off on the kitchen, we were getting off in the cells, you know what I mean? It was constant like shit right there. But the thing was, it was cool, homie. It was a good program. Like I actually liked the fact that when I was in Corcoran, even I had good cellies. Had a homie from Long Beach, and then I had my celly from fucking Sac about Bugsy. Shout outs to the homie. I was solo with them most of my term. Until to like the end, I ended up getting moved out, and because ended up going to the SAP program, so I ended up moving out, and I was sold up with some homie from from Pomona. Yes, and it was cool, homie. I had a good experience there, right? And like I said, and at the beginning, like it was just, you're gonna be nervous on any bus drive, right? But I had worse ones, right? Like I'm probably getting to the bus drive to Ironwood. That one was where I was kind of more tripping on, right? Because this one in Corcoran, it happens to be a yard that I knew that there was gonna be compas, there was gonna be a little bit of everything, right? And even though it's cracking, I was comfortable in the sense that I knew I was gonna have homies from my town. It was just, you're a little bit more up north. You're not totally all the way down south. So it wasn't bad, bro. And I noticed that pretty much it was just, I was going, like when I first got there, I was kind of going more on what I heard and like the prior history of that prison, right? Which I'm not saying that it's not off the hook. Old Corcoran is with the shit, right? Like shit will happen there. But the thing is, depending on the individual, some people like that type of environment, right? Because they stay on their toes. And I started noticing that, like after that prison, I was like, you know what? You can't really go by what people say, right? Because everybody's gonna have a total different experience than the one that you might experience yourself, right? And I noticed that at first I was like, I might have been tripping a little bit on this, like going over there, which I try to play a front that I wasn't. But in reality, it was a good prison. I met good ass homies, and like I said, man, so it's always good to not. It's good to listen to some people, right? But it's always good to experience things on your own, and not actually have other people give you their experiences, right? So I was like, man, it was okay, bro. It was an okay prison. Things have changed with time, and once I moved, I mean, I didn't want to move. I moved, and it was what it was, you know. I kind of missed that prison because it was like I was cell living, I was in all that, right? But I'm gonna be quite real. I don't miss it now. I'll tell you that right now. I don't miss no prisons now. You know what I mean? Because fucking life out here in the streets is way better. So let me just put that out there. But my experience right there in Corcoran wasn't as bad. I will be getting into some stories on like some war stories, because that's what a lot of people want to tap into. But I figured I would tap in on my bus drive to Corcoran, right? Because a lot of people are probably wondering how those bus drivers are, and if people will be concerned like before they get there, right? And yeah, pretty much I was concerned, but it wasn't as bad, homie. And I ended up liking that prison in the sense that if you're gonna do time, it wasn't a bad place to do it, you know. So with all that being said, man, I'm gonna cut this video right here short, and I hope you guys like it, man. So if you guys did, man, hit them thumbs up. If you guys didn't, bro, put a thumbs down, homie. It's all good, you know what I'm saying? Your boy's not tripping. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, especially if you're gonna be tapping in, homie. If you're gonna continue showing love for your boy, at least be subscribed. Even if you're gonna talk shit or whatever, you know that shit's allowed here on this channel. So yeah, man, with all that being said, man, I send my love to all the regular people, like I said, because they're smart. To all the norteños, the bulldogs, the sureños, the blacks, the whites, homie. I send my love to everyone, homie, in full. I don't give a fuck. And yeah, man, with all that being said, man, it's your boy Conejo, and I'm out.